Okay, scholars, so as good readers, you've been practicing on figuring out the plot. Figuring out the
Plot.
What is plot? Olusola?
Plot is the problem attempted to resolve and the solution.
Excellent. So over the past couple of weeks, you've been reading lots of juicy stories with lots of plots that you have to pay attention to. We read the story of Frog Prince. I know, Sydney. When we read the story of Frog Prince, we realized that this character, the frog, didn't just have one problem in the story. He kept coming across many problems, you're right, over and over again. When we read the story, The Frog Prince, one of the first things that we realized was that the author told us, once upon a time, there lived a frog who loved a princess. We read that on page 5 of our story. And that helped us figure out what the character wanted. What the character
Wanted.
As we continued to read, we figured out more about why this character could not get what he wanted. When we looked at page 11, I think you'll remember this. On page 11, the princess said, "How could you ever be a companion of mine?" the princess cried. And that helped us know that she was saying this frog could never, ever be around her. Why was that a problem for this frog, T-Wall?
That was a problem for this frog because the frog wanted somebody to love him, and the only person that he loved was the princess.
So thinking about the Common Core shifts, one of the most evident shifts in today's lesson was text-based evidence and answers. So I was consistently having students go back to the text to prove the conclusions that we're making, and the students were also pushing each other to do the same thing.
The pieces of evidence that we use is actions, picture clues, and what the author tells us. And the author is telling us that he's giving us a clue that the princess is very cruel and the princess hates frogs.
You're right, Sydney. And Olusola, what type of evidence is dialogue, actions, what the author tells us, and some of those picture clues? What do we call all of those types of evidence?
We call it the text evidence.
We call it the what, Sydney?
We call it the text evidence.
So today, as we continue to read our story, or we begin to read a brand new story, you are going to use text evidence, just like we did with the Frog Prince, to help us figure out the problems that these characters have. We're going to read a story in the book called Solve It. And in this book, Solve It, there are lots of different mysteries that a detective named Gail needs to solve. Your job is to figure out the problem that these characters have and what they do to try to solve it. You're really good at making those conclusions, like feelings, like you said with the frog, and making conclusions about the problem using your schema. I want to see today who's going back to the text to find evidence for those conclusions. We're going to start off by reading the mystery in your story called The Case of the Strange Noise. Go ahead and open up your book. Oops, sorry, Damon. To The Case of the Strange Noise. So today, the lesson was focused around critical thinking and inferencing questions, but based around evidence in the text, primarily what the author's telling us, and dialogue from the characters. What do you think it means when it says the case of the strange noise?
I think that means that they try to figure out what the strange noise is, and it's a mystery. Kayla Wilson, I can add on to you by saying that I think the boy is Jail is gonna listen to the noise and try to figure it out, and he's probably gonna say that he wants to be a detective to find this out.
So as a good reader, what kind of conclusions are you going to make as you read? Oh, I love the signal you're giving her. Talk to your group.
As I read, I'm going to make a conclusion. I'm going to go back to the text.
Excellent, and
you have to use your schema, and one part of schema is is a connection.
Excellent. What types of conclusions might you make today, Demond?
You might make a conclusion about the motivation.
Excellent. Go ahead and begin to silently read up until that Post-it note. So typically my class as a whole is 30 students. What I ideally like to do is break down the 30 students, into 3 groups of 10 students. That lets me have more direct instruction. It lets me target students. When I'm doing my plans, I could differentiate the level of questioning and the level of plans and the complexity of texts. So it's much more targeted for smaller group instruction. All right, T-Wall, start us off. So far, what's this story about? Talk to your group.
So far the story is about Ken and Mike, and they were playing in their house, and while they was playing in their house, they heard a sound, and they wanted to figure out what was that sound, and one of them said that maybe it was a bird, but it was not a bird.
What are some conclusions you want T-Wall to talk about?
T-Wall, I want you to talk about what their dialogue was, and how they felt about the sound. And I know we heard the problem, and I want you to make a conclusion about the problem. I can make a conclusion about the feelings. Ken and Mike are feeling confused because they don't understand what's going on. And I know because from the text, I heard Ken ask, "I'm not sure," and sometimes when I say I'm not sure, I get confused because I don't know what's happening, and I want to know what's going on.
Let's all find that information in the text. T-Wall says they're feeling confused. Do we have other dialogue or other text information that they're confused? Put your finger on it if you find it. So this morning, knowing that my groups were going to be focused on dialogue inside of the text, when I was doing my read aloud this morning and I was making my conclusions and I was thinking aloud about how I did that, I made sure that I pointed to each of the parts in the story, and I was modeling a habit that good readers would do, so they could do that at the green table. And then in terms of throughout the school year, we start this model of guided reading about 2 weeks into the school year. So 2 days a week, every week from the start of the school year until now, they've had 40 minutes of time to work with 5 groups of students in such a closed setting.
They might be confused by saying, maybe it's a bird outside.
Why does that make you think that they're confused, Sydney?
Maybe that makes me think that they're confused because sometimes when you say maybe, that means you're not really sure, you're not really confident that it's a bird or not.
So now we've figured out the problem and how they're feeling, which you did an excellent job because you're going back to the text. As a good reader, what can we expect to find out now in the story? We talked about the problem. Now what would we be able to figure out?
We can expect to find out their actions, and their actions for going to Gail's house was because they wanted to find out the sound, and Gail pulled out a card from her pocket, and it said, "Gail Smart, kid detective. I can solve any mystery." And now I know why they went to Gail's house, because Gail can solve any mystery.
We're talking about Gail and a piece of information that we know about Gail. Could we look to find information about Gail on this page? Go ahead, point to it. Good, T-Wall. You found where her name was. That's a good clue that we're going to find information about her there. Let's look at the information on this card. That's a business card. Your big people might have business cards when they want to tell people what they're really good at and their job, so people can come and ask them to help them with this for their job. Let's look at the information that we know about Gail in this piece of evidence, and let's use that to help us figure out, as Kayla was, why would these boys come to see her? Take a moment and look and think about that. You two turn and talk to your partners. Go ahead, whisper, turn and talk.
Because they wanted to figure out the mystery, and I know if there was somebody who was good at detective, and I needed to figure out a mystery, I would probably go to their house.
How do you know that Gail's a detective?
I know that Gal is a
Gail.
Gail is a detective because in his business card it says that Gail Smart Kid Detective.
What's this word?
Gail Smart Kid Detective.
Excellent. Let's come together. This group of students is very strong they're actually around on the step level at the end of second grade, mid-second grade reading level. So what I have to do is I have to find complex texts that have lots of dialogue, multiple characters. They have to interpret new vocabulary words. So I have to bring the challenge to them and work with them to figure out how to pull the details from the text to help create conclusions. Today, as you continue to read at your seats, you're going to read and find out if Gail is able to help them solve this mystery, and your job is to kind of be a detective too. You are going to look for clues in the text to see if you figure anything out that might figure out this case of the strange noise. I wonder if you're going to be able to figure it out with the clues before Gail is going to be able to figure it out. We're going to talk about this as we come back together tomorrow.